Greetings everyone. As usual, these videos are stretching out more than I initially thought, and so while I originally planned to include this point with the previous one, it is obviously better if I include it separately in its own entity as a video. Last time I talked about Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and how I think that it was a very badly implemented idea because it was introduced later without revisiting the old design of Borderlands 2 very much. And that led to all the bad sides and bad aspects of the game being highlighted instead of the good ones. One of those is, of course, the issue of gear and the stuff that you use along the way, ranging from weapons, to shields, to grenades, to class mods, to whatever. Obviously the original design of Borderlands, and this was present ever since the very first one, was that they wanted you to experience all the guns and all the different unique gun mechanics that they introduced to you, that they had in store for you in the game. So they clearly wanted you to just keep picking guns as you're playing along and using whatever you find, because that is the only way you're going to experience everything. If you got a very powerful sniper that you really liked very early on in the game and never had reason to swap that for something else, you would never find that there are other snipers which perhaps have burst fire, which have rapid fire, which have one-shot, one-kill properties. And so therefore gear, of course, in Borderlands has levels. And while you were originally supposed to, like I said, experience the game to the fullest and just pick all the guns as you're playing along and constantly swap and sell the guns you were currently holding in favor of other ones. At the end game, of course, you had clearly strong and potent guns that you were supposed to go after, and they were clearly superior in many cases to the regular guns in the game. I would argue that the best legendary design is a gun that does not completely negate the use of regular guns of the same class. Like, for example, in the case of the Volcano, which I don't have on me, I believe the perfect design for it, if you would ask me, is for it to have way more splash and be able to affect way more enemies around it, but have slightly less damage than the Sniper, which is kind of what the Volcano is currently is in Borderlands 2, and I believe even the pre-sequel, but not in the best way. While you could again get away with the Volcano, when you're playing, like I said, in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, you really need to min-max your build, and so you would generally go for a Sniper over a Volcano. But I talked about that and I digress. So why am I still here? It's because I want to farm Knuckle Dragger. And this video is going to be, of course, about farming and gear and how that coincided with save editors and what my stance is on this and how I fear it would affect Borderlands 3. In many cases, like I said, gear had a very... Oh, sorry, I have to quit continue. Which, of course, is stupid in by itself, and I'm going to talk about that. But let me elaborate on gear first. The pick-up as you play aspect of Borderlands 2 by design, and even Borderlands 1, and of course, or Borderlands game, was again meant to highlight all the guns to you. As you were playing, you were meant to find out that there are bandit rocket launchers, there are Dahl snipers, there are Hyperion shotguns, and you get to experience all of that. But while I could say that in normal mode and True Vault Hunter mode, especially in normal mode, you were mostly, I believe, using gear to patch your character's weaknesses. Well, if you were using it to do anything specific at all, I don't believe we got a... what was it called again? The Hornet. You were mostly using guns and gear to patch your character's weakness. At least that's the way I played. I recognize that Zero isn't a particularly tanky character, so instead of using something along the lines of an Amplify shield on him to boost my damage further, I decided to go with a Turtle Shield in order to be more tanky and survive more in a fight. So I was patching my weaknesses. And like I said, that kind of stopped being the case. Kind of, not completely. You still can't run around with a Beast Shield in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. That would be suicide. But most people resorted to that because they really found no meaningful way of dealing damage. And they weren't willing to slag everything and min-max their build, whatever. I talked about that in length. So with the introduction of Ultimate Vault Hunter mode specifically, you had to min-max your build, and thus you really had to start to seek out these completely overpowered guns that are stronger than everything else, because you don't want to make your life harder. Even if it's not an issue of like flat out power and damage, the grog nozzle which I have here, this gun, which is of course very notorious, and everyone in the Borderlands community knows what that gun is. It had of course a very bad reputation, and rightfully so. I believe one time Dirch had a Salvador kind of like expert on his channel. Dirchlands, of course, very legendary in the Borderlands community. And when he was talking about the grog and how it synergized with Salvador, he said something very spot on. He said it felt like something a 12-year-old modder would make. But regardless of how bad of a reputation it got, and how people started, like I said, experimenting, oh, look at this, you can actually make a build where you don't have to rely on maxi weapons for healing, and they'd go out of their way and try to really push the bargain. Oh yeah, this build works, I can actually do it. I guarantee you, once they went back to their usual repertoire, they were using Moxie guns. A lot of raid bosses. Bottom line is, even if you don't like using Moxie guns, you can't deny that the game is much easier when you have a grog nozzle. You can't deny that. There is a reason why the popular guns are popular. There's a reason why the guns that were sought out because they did work. The guns had something very special about them. Nobody really went out of their way to farm for a Gub. People went out of their way to farm for a Hornet, but for other reasons, of course, because the Hornet is relatively easy to get, and I'm going to talk about that. So you had, especially with Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, clear targets when it comes to farming. You had gear that you absolutely must get in order to make your life easy, in order to make your experience with Borderlands 2 in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode normal, not weird, not harder than what other people are going through. You wanted the same experience that other people were having, and so you had to get your Moxie guns, you had to get your Pimpernels, you had to get whatever it is that you had to get your Sandhawks, whatever it is that other people used as gear. So with that out of the way, you could also highlight that even in the base game, and this is again a testament as to how Ultimate Vault Hunter mode just highlighted the bad things about Borderlands 2, you had a lot of stuff that was absolutely stupid. Forget rarity, forget levels, like of course there's no reason for me to use this white revolver. Forget levels, forget rarity, even when it comes to entire weapon classes. Why would you use a non-elemental dull assault rifle? Why would you ever do that? Why would you use a, for example, Slag Vladov sniper? So you had a lot of obsolete gear that you really did not want, that would end up hurting you if you used it over others. if you really wanted to apply an elemental onto your enemies, you're far better off, of course, using something from Maliwan here, instead of like going with a bandit gun or doll or whatever, or even Hyperion. So in each and every case, you had weapons, gear that was clearly coveted and superior to others in the game. And so you had clear targets as to what the guns that you wanted on your character were. And so a lot of the guns, entire classes, entire categories were completely redundant. You did not have to go for them at all. If you ever got them, you would sell them. And even when it comes to like that goes further, of course. For example, grenades. Who the hell liked rubberized grenades? Nobody. Homing grenades. Nobody wanted those. You would either go for lobbed, or you go for longbow, preferably longbow. Pretty much everybody liked longbow grenades. You had comms that boosted skills that didn't work. Why would I want a melee comm for 0 that boosts resurgence? Why would I ever want a purple comm that always boosts resurgence? I'm far better off getting a blue comm that boosts backstab, I believe, and killing blow. So you have not like any comm would do. Comms that boost resurgence are clearly inferior. And even when you get one that boosts the skills you want, it's really restricted your options. So a lot of the comms were obsolete, a lot of grenades were obsolete, a lot of guns were obsolete. They were stupid to go for, and you really had to go for something else. And even when you do get the thing you want, like the name of the thing you want, you still had further attributes to pay attention to. When you apply this to, like I said, for example, TDO shields are a stupid idea. Spike shields generally are a stupid idea. Comms, like I said, E-Tech weapons, nobody liked those. So a lot, like the bazillion guns that they advertised, 90% of those bazillion guns are completely obsolete. Now, suppose I really want a Pimpernel, and this Pimpernel here is perfect. That's because I actually didn't farm this. This was dropped in my brother's game by somebody who was trying to help out. So this gun is almost guaranteed to be gibbed, actually, to be save edited, because the stock is perfect. Maybe I would disagree with the grip. But besides that, like, the gun is perfect. It has the perfect prefix, which is barking, which is this thing over here, which boosts damage. The stock is perfect. Everything's perfect. When you're farming, when you're trying to get a Pimpernel for your character, this is obviously the Pimpernel that you want. Any Pimpernel that you get which doesn't match this one, maybe I'd go for a different side as well. So there is a clearly perfect Pimpernel, just like there is a clearly perfect Hellfire. Maybe in the case of Hellfires and submachine guns, you'd care slightly less about the sight. You'd still have some sort of personal preference, although. But for many guns, there was a superior version. For example, this Sword Explosion. If you don't get it with a casual prefix, you're missing out. A Sword Explosion without a casual prefix is way inferior to a Sword Explosion with a casual prefix. So even after you highlight what guns you want very specific attributes to be present in that gun. For example, for me as a 0 player, the grog nozzle I want is one that has a blade. In some cases, it doesn't really matter. For example, a rapier, even if it's not slag, nobody really cares, because you rarely ever use your rapier for slagging, even though it is clearly better if your rapier comes in slag, because the gun damage on it is pathetic. And you might as well use it for slagging instead of keep swapping back and forth between the grog nozzle and the rapier. So, when it comes to gear in Borderlands, a lot of the gear is stupid and obsolete, and you really don't want to carry it and use it. The gear you do want is very specific. Some of it is extremely hard to get, and you need specific versions of that gear when it comes to at the very least, level, like is demonstrated here, although not precisely as I want. As you can see, even a 2-bit Monglit takes a year to kill, but okay, I'll give that a pass since my Hellfire is level 50. So, because of this very, very specific problem, that on top of you requiring very specific gear for UVHM, and please don't try to argue different, you could maybe make do with weaker weapons, but you would be shooting yourself in the foot. If you want to snipe at OP8, you really have to go with Lyudas and Pimpernels. You going for like doll snipers or Hyperion snipers is not viable. So your options were very limited. And even again, like I said, after you highlight your options and you go to this designated place, like I am here, repetitively doing the exact same thing of killing this stupid mini-boss called Knuckle Dragger to get a Hornet, not every Hornet that drops is going to satisfy me. So, well, in the case of the Hornet, they're probably all usable, but in the case of many other guns, the version you can get in many instances will be clearly not usable. It is an inferior version that doesn't yield you the desired effect of the gun. And even when that is not the case, if I, for example, got a Hornet here with a Tediore grip, which looks ugly, and let's say a Tediore sight and a blade, that would be a much inferior Hornet to the one that I have on my character currently, for example, which is level 50 and is currently obsolete. So your options with farming were very, very, very limited and restrictive. So this again ties into my point about UVHM. Why do I hate UVHM? Because it's very restrictive. It's very specific with what works and what doesn't. And gear highlights that way further. So, in the case of Knuckle Dragger here, you could probably endure through the repetitive, stupid task of farming. And I might go ahead and start talking about this right now. Why is farming so kind of loved by RPG communities? What is fun about this? This process that I'm doing right now, that I'm doing right in front of your eyes, where I'm quit continuing, does it really animate? Like, again, like I said in the very first one, with RPGs, you're constantly breaking the fourth wall. Why do I have to quit continue? Like, I want this gun. I want this Hornet. Is there anything that kind of like stems from my skill? If I meet some other Zero right now who's level 58 and he has a Hornet, like for example I was at level 50, what does having this Hornet prove? What does it mean? Does it mean that I'm a better player than that guy? No, it only proves that I got it to drop. It might have dropped out of nowhere. I have had an instant in Hammerlock DLC where an Impaler just dropped out of a dunk pile. I didn't farm for it. I didn't do anything. And like I said, what is farming? What is killing Knuckle Dragger over and over and over again? What does it prove? When you finally get your Hornet, how is that Hornet like a product of your own hard work? I'd say it's a product of your like patience. And many people understandably don't want to go for that. A very clear case of this, in my mind, is the grog nozzle. Most people who don't want to go down the route of quote-unquote like exploiting the game and maybe cheating keep the grog nozzle on themselves by simply not completing the Beard Makes a Man whatever quest from Tiny Tina's DLC. That's all they do. They just accept the mission and keep the gun. How is that different from save editing and just keeping the gun permanently in your backpack? This is what I talked about when I said that RPG games have like a conflicting message. You don't understand what they want you or don't want you to do. If the developers didn't want the grog nozzle to be constantly present in your inventory, they wouldn't have made it possible for you to keep the grog nozzle if you simply don't complete the quest. You have only 39, like I said, and limited space in your bank, but you can make mule characters that you can trade with. Well, maybe not trade with, that was kind of like possible, that is possible here on console, but even on PC, you can keep making new characters and swapping gear through the claptrap closet, which would take considerably longer time. I believe we got to drop. There it is, there is my Hornet. What Hornet did I get? Well, I got the absolutely ugly sight, but at least I got a good grip. I'm not very satisfied with the sight. I really hate this sight. But what does that prove? Like, what does this Hornet now mean? Does this mean that, oh my god, I'm a very, very, very good Borderlands player? No, it doesn't. It just means that I had the endurance and free time to quit continuing and keep killing Knuckle Dragger. So in case of Knuckle Dragger here, at least you immediately spawn right from this gate, and you can kill him very quickly. And so you can, in a way, like endure farming the gun again if you don't like the parts. But what if I am Gage, and I don't know how effective the gun is on Gage, and I wanted a Maliwan shock pistol, out of which, of course, the superior version would be, or one of the good options would definitely be, the Thunderball Fists. And Thunderball Fists drops from, what's his name? Captain Flint, which is way out here. There is no easy way of getting to him, like I do with Knuckle Dragger here, where you can quit continue, you're like immediately in his face. Like I said, why we have to rely on quit continue, I do not know. It really breaks the experience. So I have to run almost 15 minutes to get to Captain Flint. So can you imagine what farming a perfect Thunderball Fists is like? A clear example of this again is like the Lyuda. It's not really quick getting to the Lyuda. You can jump up the cliff from the back, but even that takes you considerably longer time than something like Knuckle Dragger here. So farming isn't fun. Farming is not fun. And the way that your gear is obsolete after a few couple of levels is not fun either. So you probably should reserve your farming until you're at max level. But like I said, Gearbox keeps introducing higher level caps and Ultimate Vault Hunter modes and whatever that keep rendering your gear obsolete, so you have to redo everything. So it's very understandable that people did not want to go down that route. I don't want to farm. I don't want to keep killing the same exact enemy 10 times in a row. It's repetitive, it's stupid. In fact, this is where I feel that challenges were used and implemented very poorly. Because we had area-specific challenges. I believe we have one, if I could find it here. This area is called Southern Shelf, I believe. Southern Shelf. Here, kill Captain Flint without any players taking damage from his dragon breath. Had that been a prerequisite, that if you make this task, for example, slightly harder, or if you do something more specific, for example, kill Captain Flint with fire weapons that he's resistant to, and if you do that, he drops a gun that for once makes sense. Why does Captain Flint, which is a bandit leader obsessed with fire, drop a Maliwan pistol that deals shock damage. His other drop is a bandit pistol that deals fire damage, which is perfectly reasonable, but why does the Thunderball Fist drop from him? But that's beside the point, I digress. What if you take something along the lines of these challenges and tweak them to the point where they're actually challenging, and make them the prerequisite to getting the designated drop from a boss? For example, like I said, kill Captain Flint with a fire weapon, which he's resistant to, which would obviously be a much more difficult task than killing him using your regular method. If you do that, you get a guaranteed drop. Then I could possibly understand this. But in its current form of like Knuckle Dragger, Boom Boom, Midgemong, Captain Flint, there's an obvious, steep, kind of like time barrier between something like Knuckle Dragger, which drops a very good gun, which is the Hornet, and something like Captain Flint, which drops the Thunderball Fist, which isn't really all that useful if you're not Gage. I believe even on Gage people have found better gear to use. So this is very weird. And it is understandable why a lot of people didn't want to go for it, me included. And that is going to transition over to my next point, which I'm going to switch over to right now. So, I am back here in True Vault Hunter mode to regain access to my sanctuary in order to see my save. And save editors and the thing that they entail is actually probably to me the most important thing that I fear for Borderlands 3. Because save editors are the tool, apart from the modding community, modders who introduced, like I said, the UCP, unofficial community patch, which made Ultimate Vault Hunter mode far more reasonable. All of a sudden, your shield capacity actually matters. You don't actually use your shield only for the like the unique property it gives you. The capacity actually matters. Maybe shock is a little bit more useful. All the good things that came with the UCP. Before that, all we had to patch the game's mistakes with were save editors. Like I said, farming is not fun. It is not a difficult task. When you get a gun through farming, it is not a testament to how strong, how smart, how well you play. It just means that you have the endurance and kind of like will to keep sitting in front of your game and doing the exact same thing over and over and over and over and over again until you get the gun to drop. And you were kind of like forgiving and have low standards when it comes to what guns you use. For example, like I said, who the hell has use for a Slag Lyuda? If you farm a Lyuda, forget levels, forget rarity, forget like forget like weapon parts. Who wants a Slag Lyuda? What's a Slag Lyuda used for? Nobody wants a Slag Lyuda. Most of the times, if you want a Lyuda, you want it in fire and fire, shock, or corrosive. Preferably fire and shock, because those two are going to be used to kill raid bosses and help you along with the game. Corrosive could be used in the main game for mobbing, but you're not going to use it against any bosses, because I don't believe any raid boss in the game like requires a corrosive Lyuda to kill. So, and one more point I want to make about farming is that the game constantly like shoves this multiplayer aspect in your face, and I touched upon this when I talked about raid bosses. You want to go in a group, but if you want to farm a boss in multiplayer, quitting the area and coming back doesn't respawn him. You have to quit, reconnect everyone, and then continue. How dumb, how unimmersive is that? So it is perfectly understandable that people went with save editors. Like I said, you could make mule characters and use this thing here to carry way more guns in your bank than the allowed 24. I don't know what I believe it's 24. You can carry only 39, but you can keep accepting mission rewards and like overriding the max capacity to a point where you can carry like 100 guns. And you can just like hard switch a gun from the ground. You can hold the gun pickup weapon in order to swap the gun you were holding for that. So you just Swap in your mission reward, like for example this one. I just swap it here if I find a very good gun on the floor, and I just hard pick it up, and this gun get tossed out instead. So you could do everything you want in Borderlands if you're willing to just use the rules that are presented to you by the game. So save editors, in a way, in most cases, only made what was already possible easier. They were only saving time. And like I said, up until Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, even in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, like, I can't say that Borderlands is a very difficult game, it's just a game with a very weird identity. Once you realize that, okay, I have to reevaluate the way I play this, I have to slag everything, I probably should swap out my grenade for a slag transfusion, and I should play this very specific way, you could get through Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, no problem. But again, it's like a very different Borderlands. So save editors allowed us to bypass the game's problems. I don't want to keep the Beard Makes a Man quest active in my mission log. I just want the grog nozzle. I can save edit and here it is. How is that different? What is construed as cheating? I don't understand. Why is keeping a mission active and using the item not cheating? Why is crushing Master Guy with a gate? Why does boring Hyperius? Why does dual wielding with Salvador? What's cheating, what's not in Borderlands? I don't understand. And who cares? It's a single player game. So, instead of farming, the most stupid example is dashboard farming for mission rewards. For example, the Pimpernel is a mission reward item. And in order to get a perfect version, you have to accept you have to turn in the mission. If you don't like the gun, you have to dashboard out and then come back in order to try again. How is that for immersiveness? How is that for farming? And each time you level up, you lose all your guns, because everything you farmed for, like for example this Hornet that took me ages to get, and is not fun at all, it will be obsolete a couple of levels from now. So yeah, it is understandable why people went with save editors. I want to increase my backpack space. That was patched. It is currently again possible with the community patch. I want to keep my guns if I'm already in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode. Understandably, yes, in normal mode you'll be far better off experiencing the game raw and just picking up guns as you go. But in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, I already know the guns I want. I don't want to use this thing. I don't want to. I use it in normal mode and I understand the concept of the gun and it doesn't suit my playstyle anymore. I want this. I want, for example, the Ogre. I want a Hellfire. I want a Hornet. So yeah, save editors allowed us to do what was already possible, only better and with less pain, less time, less wasted hours grinding and doing the exact same thing over and over and over again. Maybe you could argue that, for example, modding your bar in order to give yourself way OP stats is a bit too much. Of course it is. Most people, of course, like I said, play with bar off. So that could be like giving yourself an unfair advantage. But again, who cares? Borderlands is mostly, I believe, a single-player game. It is not a competitive game. Even the multiplayer in it is cooperative, not competitive. Dueling is not a huge part. Maybe giving yourself more skill points than necessary, even though it currently doesn't matter. The skill points you have can give you all the skills that you want. And you, like I said, there are clearly bad skills that you do that you're far better off not even spending a single point into. So save editors and losing them is very scary to me, because that would mean that all the problems that the game has will be, there'll be no way for you to work around them, and that scares me. If Borderlands 3 doesn't have support for save editors, same as this version for Borderlands on PlayStation 4, Borderlands 2 and TPS on PlayStation 4 does, the only way for you to save edit is to migrate your save over to a PlayStation 3 in order to do that. You're stuck with the game's problems, and they are numerous. And that's the point. Borderlands doesn't make sense until you force it to make sense. Through using, like I said, save editors and numerous exploits and OP builds. And you have to kind of like craft Borderlands to your own liking. Like the role-playing in this game is real. Like you have to role-play as a developer in order to play it. That is like the best kind of like summary I have to give about this game. You have to role play as a developer in order to make the game make sense. And that's why if Borderlands 3 doesn't support mods, if it doesn't support save editing, and that could very much be the case, then I really fear for the future of that game, because so far what we have from Borderlands games is not a clear cause for optimism when it comes to that stuff. Because, like I said, you don't have the necessary tools to make the game work. You have farming, which is very inconsistent. There's no guarantee with the thing you're going to get. There are a billion ways you could make this game better. A lot of people said that why don't you introduce weapon modding into Borderlands? And yes, that would be a perfect idea, even if to me it even makes sense in the lore. Like, for example, this gun was a, which one? This is a legit drop. I got this from the Dragons, and it has a bandit stock. Why would Tediore put, this is clearly a bandit stock. This is not a Tediore stock. Who put this bandit stock on it? One could argue that it was somebody who modded the gun. So why can't you come to Marcus here, give him your gun, pay him iridium, seraph crystals, whatever it is, and have him change parts? Why can't you farm actually weapon parts? Why can't you buy weapon parts? If you ask me, when I was trying to kill Hyperius, I wanted a singularity grenade, and I was content with having simply a white one, and I couldn't find one. All the singularities I got were either rubberized, which everyone knows we hate, or homing or whatever. And to kill Hyperius effectively, you need a longbow or lobbed singularity grenade. I would have settled for a white one. It would have been enough for me. So the way I see it, you should come to this guy, and instead of like when you click shop, you get just a regular. Oh, this is new. You get a regular, look at white guns. White guns. You should be able, especially when you come to him, not to one of his vendors. You come to him, you should be able to do everything. If it's a white gun, you should be able to like construct it from scratch. You should be able to tell him, okay, Marcus, here's your iridium, here's your cash, make me this white gun. And he should be able to do it. If it's a green gun, you can, for example, you have limitations. You can, for example, let's say, choose the element on it. Or if you bring him a green gun, he can change. If you bring him a green gun, he can change everything with it. If you bring him a blue gun, you can't change the element. If you bring him a purple gun, but there's always something you can mod. So that when I get, for example, a Hornet like this to drop, and I'm content with it, but I would really love a different sight on it. And if it came in a different element, I'd really like that. I could pay Marcus to do that for me. Because, like I said, if you want to make sense of Borderlands the same way I did, and the same way that numerous people, including Dirch, everybody who's a famous Borderlands player and Borderlands YouTuber, uses save editing. And Dirch said, the way I play Borderlands is that I farm my gear, I get it to drop once, and then I save edit and I edit the parts. So that should be available to us. And farming should be made less tedious. I would strongly suggest, even though of course it's currently too late because Borderlands 3 is already out, but something along the lines of these challenges, if you get it to trigger, if you kill the boss in that particular difficult way, you get your gun to drop. That would be fantastic. But the current system that we have, where it's all chaos and it's all up to you and it's all up to RNG, that is not fun. And I really dread for Borderlands 3 if that's all that we have. And with that, I'm going to transition over to my final point. So yeah, I believe that would be it for discussing Borderlands 2 in particular. And like I said, this final point that I made today about farming and save editing is the most important one. Of course, I would love skills not to suck. I would love gear not to be clearly, categorized into gear that works and gear that absolutely doesn't work. Like, for example, Hyperion snipers, E-Tech weapons, the list goes on and on and on. I don't want clearly superior versions of guns, like the Sword Explosion here, that is only viable with a vertical grip. I don't want to dashboard out in order to get the version of the gun I want. I don't want to be awarded, like I said, Hyperion snipers, E-Tech weapons that don't work. I don't want effervescent gear giving me more health on Digistruct Peak, even though I want less health in order to survive. And I don't want to feel at a disadvantage when I'm farming with my friends. And I would rather not farm in the traditional way that is currently present in the game. I don't want to quit continue. I don't want any of that. I would much rather save edit than go through that stuff. And I don't see it as cheating. I see it as a very reasonable solution if you know how to use it. Because you can ruin your experience with save editors. When I recommend Borderlands to somebody, I make sure not to tell them about save editing until they're halfway through True Vault Hunter mode. Because I know that if you can ruin the game for yourself if you do it wrong. But if you do it right, Borderlands is a far superior game for you. You will get to experience it way better. The best way to experience Borderlands 2 will always be on PC with unofficial community patch and a save editor. That is the best way to experience Borderlands 2. And if Gearbox wants to change that, they have to revisit these concepts of farming, of how they balance their gear, of what parts come on guns, and how you can change them. And I believe that would be it. That'll be it. Next video I'm going to talk about the pre-sequel, and with that I'm going to end this series. So thank you all for listening, and until next time.